Welcome to another episode of A Conversation with Father Orsi. I'm BC Cloutier, President of Action for Life, and this is Father Michael Orsi. Hello, Father.
Hello, my man.
Everything good?
So far, so good.
Glad to hear it. Today, Father, we're going to talk about all the evil that exists in the world.
All of it?
Well,
We might need a little more time.
Let me just start with this. This is fresh in people's minds. A few weeks ago in Philadelphia, there were gangs of thieves that were in broad daylight marching into retailers and carrying stuff away. And some of them, I will say, some of them were apprehended, and there are some charges pending. But for the most part, nothing happened. And what we see in many places, particularly where there are liberal district attorneys, is the thieves are released on personal recognizance, and then they never show up for court, and there are no consequences for that because it's a misdemeanor,
Right.
And so the cycle continues to the point that a lot of big box retailers, Target comes to mind, and several others, have just said we're going to pull out, and it's unfortunate because the inner city needs those retail stores.
Yeah. Let me say this before I get into my dissertation. They call them flash mobs.
Right.
Attack businesses. Right. Happened in Philadelphia. It happens on the West Coast. Major companies and stores, they're pulling out. You can't stay in business if everything that you have in your store is being stolen. Question for you. Do you think that all of a sudden a flash mob gets together haphazardly and decides we're going to destroy a neighborhood, we're going to conquer the business district, break the windows and steal whatever we want?
Do I think that? No. I think that people that used to be cat burglars have figured out that they can get work in the daytime that's more lucrative.
But all of a sudden come together and do this?
Oh, no. I think it's organized.
Yeah, I think it's organized. So, folks, let's begin with that. This is organized crime, organized people who are putting together these flash mobs. All right. Now, we see a general breakdown in society. This is a general breakdown. This goes across the country. And it's not just with the looting and with the inability of police and other organizations that would normally take care of making sure that people are safe and that merchandise is not stolen. But this happens because people have lost a sense of right and wrong, right? Because even if you believe that this is organized, which it is, folks, the people that are doing it, where's their sense of right and wrong? Where is the outrage in society? Why aren't the police allowed to do their job? And why doesn't the justice system punish these people for what they are doing? And I'll tell you the reason why. There was once upon a time in the late, great state of New York, a senator. His name was Senator Patrick Moynihan. Senator Moynihan was a scholar, and I believe his field was sociology. And he was surveying the situation, I suppose, 25 years ago in New York when it was beginning to break down. Society's beginning to break down. And he says, we are defining deviancy down. So instead of holding people to a higher standard, what we're saying is, maybe breaking into a store and stealing merchandise, maybe it's not that bad.
Because they need it.
Yeah.
But we're not talking about groceries.
No.
We're talking about iPhones.
Exactly. Huge TV sets, jumping out of a store window, carrying a television set, because, folks, this is unbelievable. They were being cheered on. Take it. You deserve it. You need it. Some even said it's part of reparations. You're paying back. Paying back what? To whom? All right. So we have this sense now that crime, maybe crime pays now.
Does pay, yeah.
Crime does pay, but it's dumbed down so much that what we thought was something that was important, that society had certain standards and values, that stealing was wrong, all of a sudden well, it's not that wrong anymore. There are not even any consequences to this.
Well, and let's move on from robbery. The guardrails are either non-existent or they have broadened so much that it's laughable. Take the crime of prostitution. It's no longer called, or I should say, the women who practice prostitution are no longer called prostitutes. They are now sex workers, right? Change the nomenclature and let people think that it's not nearly as bad.
Right.
You know, it's been called a victimless crime. Of course, it's not a victimless crime,
No.
particularly for the people who are engaged in it.
Right, right. This is it's also called using euphemisms, that you kind of change the term so that it doesn't seem as violent as it is, and it's somewhat deceptive. It's something that, well, it doesn't mean the same thing anymore. Because in the past, when you say somebody's a prostitute, gee, that's terrible. You know, that's a terrible thing that somebody, you know, either because it's the way they make their living or because they have no other way to make a living, whatever the case may be. I'm not judging every woman that ends up being a prostitute. There was a case here a number of years ago. A woman in Naples was arrested for prostitution. She goes before the judge, and the judge says, "Why?" And she says, "I can't pay my rent and feed my family." All right. Now, it's always wrong. It's always wrong. And there are some people that maybe because of their circumstances are doing this terrible thing because they have to live. Right? Let's just leave that there. However, we are now at a point where we're changing the term to make it more acceptable, that prostitution is an acceptable thing. And I remember reading an article not too long ago where a woman wrote the article and she said it's a terrible thing to change the name from prostitute to sex worker because it dumbs down the seriousness of the issue and it makes it look like, well, for the prostitute, the sex worker, this is only a profession and it's acceptable as any other profession is acceptable. But it also forgets the fact that it is demeaning and degrading to the woman. But if it becomes something that, well, it's only another profession, well, then maybe it's not degrading. Maybe it is something that is acceptable in society. And therefore, it kind of gives permission for this business of providing one's body as a thing to be used by somebody else, and that's by the John. But it also lets the John off the hook. Why? Because the John then says, look, you know, I paid, you know, the price. There was a business transaction.
Right.
And, you know, all I did was, you know, legitimate. She's willing and I'm willing. And she provided the goods and I provided the money. And that's all there is to it. So this woman said it's a very dangerous thing for society because you are degrading people and you are allowing people to think that something is good when it is always, always an evil and it should be avoided. Now, this came up. Why? Because you may remember not too long ago up in New York, Long Island, New York, there was a man who was apprehended because he was a modern Jack the Ripper. You know, he was out there on Long Island and there were a number of women who were missing over, say 10 years. And all of a sudden they cracked the case. It was interesting how they cracked the case, but they were all listed as sex workers.
Right.
And they had their pictures in the New York Times. These are sex workers. And, you know, they were nice-looking young women, but they were advertising themselves on the internet. Mm-hmm. And this Jack the Ripper was going on the internet and setting up
encounters
and dates. I mean, whatever they call them, I don't know, encounters with them. And then when he would meet with them, he would kill them and then bury them out on some beaches out on Long Island. Okay. But that's what engenders this whole concept of it's not a prostitute anymore. It's merely a sex worker, another way of somebody trying to make a living. And folks, you know, you can't let those words be changed because it softens the horror of what's involved. So that's the dumbing down of society and dumbing down of our morals.
We'll be back right after this. Action for Life is proud to sponsor A Conversation with Father Orsi. Action for Life is an all-volunteer, pro-life, interfaith ministry that's focused on the sanctity of life from conception to natural death. In addition to sponsoring this TV program, Action for Life provides financial support and life assistance to any woman who wishes to carry her baby to term in anticipation of an adoption. Action for Life also provides financial assistance to a variety of pro-life organizations, including maternity homes, pregnancy resource centers, anti-human trafficking agencies, and sidewalk advocates, but to name a few. Please consider making a donation so that we can continue in the fight to save preborn babies. You can donate online at actionforlife.org. Thank you and God bless. Welcome back to A Conversation with Father Orsi. I'm BC Cloutier, and this is Father Orsi. Father, before the break, we were talking about the breakdown of deviance.
You change language and make something that was not acceptable to seem that it is acceptable. And you break down the moral standards. And when you break down the moral standards, what you're also doing is you are destroying the dignity of the person. The moral standards are there because human beings are made in God's image and likeness. We have a certain dignity, and there is a certain standard by which we are called to live.
So now, along those lines, we have in certain cities places where illegal drugs are okay to be used because they don't want addicts using dirty needles and such things. And in New York just recently, I don't remember if
the late great state.
The late great state is right. I don't remember if this is at the state level or the New York City level, but either one, they've asked every citizen to carry Narcan so that if you encounter someone who is ODing, you can administer Narcan and hopefully save their life. That's a real moral conundrum because I'm not sure that I want to carry Narcan. My own personal belief is you want to use drugs, be my guest. But, that's your choice. And I should not be obligated to follow you around and hopefully save you.
Yeah.
Now, if I can rehabilitate you, that's a different story.
Yeah.
I'm probably going to get in trouble for that, aren't I, Father?
Well, I'll pull you out of it. Don't worry about it. I'll pull you out. All right. There's a movement now. One thing, we talked about euphemisms earlier, and we talked about, you change the name of prostitute to sex worker. Well, we're now talking about drug addicts, and when we try to rescue them from themselves, we say now we have to be engaged in harm reduction.
Right.
So it is no longer even considered a crime. It's that, well, somebody is taking drugs, and we have to save them from themselves. So what we have to do now is to provide safe ways in order for them to take the drugs. And therefore you have in many cities needle exchange, for example, needle exchange. Yep. Folks, I was on this a long time ago, maybe 20 years ago. I was on the Governor's Council for AIDS in New Jersey, and they wanted to introduce needle exchange, with the excuse being that, well, it's a good thing because it gives the addicts safe needles and they will not get AIDS. Well, ideally it sounds like, hey, that's a pretty good idea. However, the bottom line is that addicts, when they are involved with taking heroin, they're not thinking straight.
Right.
And so they may take the needle, they may drop the needle and leave it, wherever the case may be. There's a place called Needle Park in Switzerland. They were taking, their needles in this area, and addicts congregated.
You can find the story. 60 Minutes did a story about Needle Park. It's on YouTube.
Yeah. See, Father O's on top of the situation. I mean, but, why did you have Needle Park? Well, because they're distributing the needles there in that area, but also because it's part of the addict culture. They share needles, okay? They share the needles. So therefore, if you are someone who is infected and you share it with someone else, that person is going to get infected also. But there's one other part of this. Addicts need money. Now, how do you get money? You can sell the needles that were being distributed. And a lot of them did that. So they're a very, very unreliable population. So what you have then is an attempt, harm reduction, to make paraphernalia available. And this is what is happening up in New York, where there are machines that can have paraphernalia in the machine, just like, remember the old cigarette machines or candy machines? Yeah. Well, you could get a needle, or you can get whatever you need to administer the drugs that you need. So what we have now, folks, is a situation where we're trying to save people from themselves and not telling them that what they're doing is wrong, and that, you're not going to be saved all the time. Many times you're going to succumb to the addiction or whatever drug that you're taking. So you just mentioned a little while ago about Narcan. Mm-hmm. Okay, mm-hmm. Folks, do you know what Narcan is? You want to tell the folks about Narcan?
Well, it's a drug that reverses the effects of opioid overdose.
Right. And so you were telling us that people are being encouraged to carry that.
Civilians, just carry a Narcan in case you see a junkie that's ODing.
That's ODing, and then you're going to administer it to a junkie that's ODing. Well, first of all, folks, let me tell you right now, even if I had the Narcan on me, I don't know how to administer the Narcan. Right. I mean, It's been a long time since I did surgery. So, plus, the fact of the matter is you have to identify somebody as a junkie. Suppose I see someone in the street that's had a stroke or a heart attack. A junkie, and I go running over there with my, Narcan, and well, I could do more damage than good.
And you will get sued.
Yeah, and you will get sued. So once again, this is harm reduction, and it goes to the point of being absurd. It is an absurd thing to encourage people to administer Narcan. Now, the police, EMS, they all have that with them, and if there is a case that they do administer it. Now, the bottom line is this: even if you bring them out of the overdose, if they don't get help, they're going to go right back and do the same thing all over again. Now, this term harm reduction is rather new. It's, again, one of those euphemisms that makes something bad almost sound like good. Hey, I'm a hero. I'm reducing the harm to an addict population. Way back when I was doing the needle exchange debates up in Trenton, New Jersey, we found that there was an organization called the Lynn Smith Organization. What the heck is Lynn Smith? And I found out it was run by none other than George Soros. How do you like that? And also behind the harm reduction is the George Soros money and the George Soros organization. Let me tell you, ladies and gentlemen, anybody that thinks that they can control drugs by harm reduction, it doesn't work. We have an explosion in our country of addiction. And it's something that we have to deal with, not with Narcan, but this is a criminal thing. It has to be told that this is not only unhealthy, but it is a crime. It is a crime against humanity. And all the Narcan you want cannot change what is taking place because people are taking drugs. And you can carry all the Narcan with you that you want. That does not make you a virtuous person either.
Well, and unfortunately, the police are not motivated to pursue these crimes because the district attorneys, for the most part, not for the most part, but many district attorneys will not prosecute them. Yeah. So at that point, the police kind of, shrug their shoulders and say, there's other things I have to deal with, so I'm just going to ignore that. We'll be back right after this.
Hey, gang, I know a lot of you sometimes can't watch all of our episodes of Action for Life. However, we have a solution for that. All you have to do is go to YouTube and search for Action for Life Florida. And you can catch up on all the shows, and guess what? Extra added bonus, you get to hear my weekly homily. So, YouTube and you make a fine couple.
Welcome back to A Conversation with Father Orsi. I'm BC Cloutier. Father, before the break, we were talking about harm reduction, etc. It seems to me at the end of the day, we are allowing behaviors that should not be allowed. So once again, we are lowering the bar. And in so doing, I think that we're certainly not discouraging people from engaging in these very, very dangerous and illegal behaviors.
Sure.
Final thoughts?
Yeah. I think what we have to be careful for is people, or I'm going to say the elites, trying to change the language so that we don't even recognize how serious the problem is, or that what somebody is doing is wrong, or that what we're doing is wrong. Let me just give you this example. Way back, beginning of the big controversy over Roe v. Wade, there was the pro-abortion and pro-life. Well, that name got changed too, didn't it? Do we have pro-abortion anymore?
No.
What's it called now?
Pro-choice.
Pro-choice. Okay. Now let's face it, folks. Choice sounds like a really good thing because we all like choices in life, and I guess being an American, we love to have all of our choices, even the things that what we eat. I love to go down the aisle in the grocery store, Publix, and you can see all different kinds of cereal. And wow, I get all of these choices. Sometimes I wish that they didn't have all those choices because, it makes it a lot easier for me just to have cornflakes or Cheerios. But there are so many choices, and we like choices. And it gives us a sense of power, freedom. Yeah, freedom. I can do whatever I want. So that's what the pro-abortion people have done. They've changed the language, and hey, we're pro-choice because it's your choice. It's your right to make up anything that you think works for you. And of course, that's something that's certainly contrary to common sense, but it's also contrary to God's word. You have the Bible. The Bible tells you what's right and what's wrong, and you have an obligation to follow God's law. That's why pastors, you have to be able to get up there and speak about right and wrong, and why it's right and why something is wrong. And some things, usually they go hand in hand. It's good for you physically, it's good for you mentally, and it's good for you spiritually. And that's the key. All right. Same thing when we talk about harm reduction. No, that's drug use. You're a drug user. You are an addict. And it's not just simply that, hey, this is another choice that I'm making. This falls into what the camp that is known as libertarianism is all about. Some people say, I'm a libertarian, do whatever works for you as long as it doesn't harm somebody else. That's not Christian. Libertarianism is not Christian. I'll tell you that right now, folks. And you can write me letters and I'll tell you how wrong you are if you believe it is. How's that? Okay. Because libertarian simply means I could do whatever I want with my own body. I could even take all the drugs I want. I can even kill myself. That's why you have a rise in suicides today. It's my choice to take my own life. I'm not hurting anybody else. Well, yes, you are. You're hurting all of society because you're making life cheap. That, right. Hey, I could do whatever I want with my body. Anything I want to do sexually, like the prostitute. I can do anything I want with the drugs. And I could do anything I want with my life. I could just simply take my life. And you have now in certain states where people say, I have physician-assisted suicide. Well, isn't that nice? Physician-assisted.
That's euthanasia, but they put a new label on that too.
A new label on it. And you, of course, you recall there used to be something called the Hippocratic Oath. And they simply altered the oath. So doctors, they just took that out. So not even the doctor feels any guilt about what he or she is doing because the doctor is supposed to preserve life, not to take life. And that the oath by Hippocrates, great doctor, was that the doctor is the one who is to preserve life and do no harm. Do no harm. All right. So you get to the abortion, well, you're doing harm, all right? Woman, baby. You get to prostitution, you're doing harm. Why? To the woman, to the John, you're doing harm. But you're doing harm to society. You have dumbed down society, and you have diminished the beauty of human life, the dignity of human life. And with the courts not prosecuting people who are breaking the law, they're doing damage to society because there are no more consequences. Look, let me tell you something, folks. If there weren't laws, could you imagine the chaos that we would live in?
It's called anarchy, right?
It's called anarchy. It is called anarchy, and we're living in a time of anarchy. I'm very concerned about the welfare of our country. I really am. I think we're in a period where, we could go one way or the other. And when you live in a society where there are no more rules, well, you're living in a situation which is dog eat dog. Anybody can do whatever they want, and it breaks down civil society. We can't even work together anymore. So I'll get back to the libertarians. They're the ones that say, do whatever you want. Look, folks, if I did whatever I want, I'd be going to nowhere in a handbasket. And let's face it. All of us are human. We all have certain weaknesses. We keep laws sometimes. Why? Because we know if we break the law, we're going to be in trouble. And people don't have that sense anymore. I could do whatever I want. Right. I could rob the store, okay? It doesn't matter.
It's pervasive.
It's pervasive in society. So, I think that we have to be very, very careful about the euphemisms. Libertarianism, on the surface, it sounds like, hey, this is great, do whatever you want, and it'll be great for you, and everybody else can do what they want as long as you don't hurt anybody else. It's not good for society. We have to come together with, certain values. And we have to come together with rules and regulations. Look, I'm not a big guy on rules and regulations, except if you need them. All right. So I often say this, as little law as possible, as much as is necessary. And the laws have to be enforced. If they are not enforced, we're going to live in a jungle. And that's where we are right now. The disrespect for human life, the disrespect for property. And that's one of the things that the founding fathers in the Constitution was, talking about, with a respect for life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And what does that mean, pursuit of happiness? It means being able to function in a society where you can practice good rules for making a living. That's what capitalism is all about too. So you see, it all fits together. And that's why the country is in a precarious time. So I hope that, you folks will take what we're talking about today very, very seriously and be able to comment back to people who are talking about, I'm a libertarian. It's only a choice. It's only harm reduction. No, it's not. It's destruction. It's destruction of society. So until next week, folks, God bless.
Join us again next week for another edition of A Conversation with Father Orsi. I'm BC Cloutier. Have a great week and God bless.